Hi, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute to take a self-identification survey, so we can get an idea of who's showing up to these, who's participating in outreach on our projects, that'd be great. So we'll get started in just a few minutes. But if you want to follow that link, it's on the slide showing right now, and it's also going to go in the chat box. So just for anybody who's just joining us, thanks for joining us. We will get started in just a couple minutes. If you wouldn't mind taking the self-identification survey to help us provide you with more meaningful services for us to get an idea of who we're reaching with these types of events, we'd really appreciate it. You can see the link on the screen now, or you can find the link in the chat box, and it just takes a minute or two. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute here. If you haven't had a chance to take the self-identification survey, please do so. We'll give you just another minute, and then we'll start the presentation. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't had a chance to take the self-identification survey, you can do that anytime. We're going to get started with the presentation right now. My name is Ryan Fagan. I'm a project manager with the City of Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility, and we're going to talk about the 3rd Street and University Boulevard Bicycle Boulevard, and specifically we're going to talk about the segment from Stone Avenue to 4th Avenue. So just to give you just a little a brief overview of what brought us here. Back in November 2018, the City of Tucson voters approved Proposition 407, which consisted of parks and connections projects, and the connections side includes approximately 50 bicycle and pedestrian improvement projects. And 31 of those projects are bicycle boulevards. Those are projects that improve residential streets for people walking and biking. And we've got them all over the city, and they cover about 102 miles. So we're really starting to fill out a network that'll allow people to ride cross town on low stress, calm, mostly residential streets. So just a quick overview of bike boulevards. As I mentioned, they're typically on residential streets, though not always. They typically use traffic calming, things like traffic circles, speed humps, and chicanes to slow down cars to make for a better walking and biking environment. And they also use enhanced crossings to help people walking and biking to get across major streets. When you've got a 4 or 6 lane road, it can be really difficult to find a break in traffic. So that's one of the big pieces of bike boulevards as well. So why do we build bike boulevards? Well, we've already got a lot of bike lanes in the city. We already have, I think in the region we've got close to 1,000 miles of bike lanes and other bikeways. But a lot of those are designed for what we call the strong and fearless population. So there have been studies on the types of bicyclists that are out there, the sort of people's comfort level with riding. 1% or less are what we call strong and fearless. They're really willing to bike anywhere, any kind of facility. 7% or so are enthused and confident, and those are people who, if you give them, a bike lane on a moderate street, most of them are comfortable with that. It's the 60% that are interested but concerned that we're really targeting now. What we've seen in a lot of other cities is that when you provide high quality bike facilities that are low stress, that don't put cars and bikes in competition with each other, and you give people destinations to get to, you really see a lot more people riding. So that's really who we're targeting with bike boulevards. And we've studied some of the bike boulevards that we've already implemented, and we've seen increase in ridership. We've seen really good safety records, and we've seen traffic calming be effective in terms of slowing down cars and reducing the number of cars on those streets. So getting back to that interested but concerned population, when you're designing for interested but concerned, you need to be mindful of you need to be mindful of the roadway design, and specifically, you can't have car traffic that's too fast, and you really can't have more than 1,000 or 2,000 vehicles per day if you're going to have cars and bikes operating in the same space. That can work fine on a really low volume residential street, but when you start to see more car traffic, there really needs to be separation, and so that would take the form of a bike lane, generally either buffered or protected in some way. So just a quick recap, we did a bunch of outreach last fall on this project, as well as the Treat Avenue Bike Boulevard. We did a total of 7 public meetings. We reached out to neighborhood associations and presented to a few of them when they requested that. Excuse me. And we spoke to and got surveys from hundreds of people at these events and online. And we got a lot of really good input that much of which we were able to incorporate into the designs of the projects, or that confirmed, what we, sort of what we were planning was on target with what people wanted to see. So what we're discussing right now is the segment of the road of the project from Stone Avenue to 4th Avenue. So right now it's, I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with it. It's a pretty wide road. It has parking on both sides of the street. It has a center turn lane, and it has a shared car and bike lane right now. And so here's a Google Street View image that we pulled showing current conditions. So what we're proposing, actually, let me go back to that. I apologize. So right now we see about 3,000 vehicles per day on this segment, and the 85th percentile speed that we've measured is 29 miles per hour. And all that means is that 85% of the vehicles that are driving down that street are going 29 miles an hour or slower, and the other 15% are going faster. And that's really just a figure that's used when analyzing the performance on roadways. So both of those figures exceed what like national bodies recommend for shared lanes. So we really want to look at other options to make these comfortable low stress options here for people biking. So we're looking at two options really for the general roadway cross section between Stone and 4th Avenue. So right now we're looking at Stone to Herbert, because between Herbert and 4th is a little different. So option 1 would be protected bike lanes, and you can see an illustration of what that looks like in another city, where you've got car parking to the left of the bike lane. You've got a buffer, and that's to account for people potentially opening their doors into that area and not wanting to strike bicyclists. And then you have the bike lane, and then you have the curb. And so this provides a high level of protection for people on bikes. It really creates a separation between drivers in vehicles and people riding bikes. The downside is that it would impact the amount of parking on University, because we need to provide visibility at intersections. We do need to restrict parking within about 30 feet of the intersections. So, and that's just because if we don't do that, then a bicyclist could pop out from behind a parked car right at the intersection, and we really can't do that. So, there's engineering guidance on this, and we're following that. The other option would be buffered bike lanes. It would keep the parking where it is. It would put a buffer between bicyclists and car traffic, and it would put a buffer between and it would put a buffer between bicyclists and parked cars as well. So this would be an improvement over the current situation where bikes and cars are sharing the lane, but and it would not impact parking. So these are the two main options that we're considering right now. So we're looking for feedback on that right now. We'll be sharing a survey later about that. The other area that we're looking for input on is from Herbert to 4th Avenue. So that's that block or half block west of 4th Avenue. And there's two options that we're looking at right now. So one of them would involve including the bike lane, including parking, and removing the left turn lane at the intersection. That may create a small delay over current conditions, but it's a pretty low volume intersection as far as signalized intersections go. So it wouldn't be a huge change from what there is now. And this illustration shows the protected bike lane option, but we could do it with the buffered option that wouldn't necessarily impact parking. The other option would be to keep the left turn lane, keep the bike lanes, and remove parking. So we're really looking for input on this and trying to determine if this is a feasible option given the land uses in the area. So right now we're looking at finishing up design hopefully within the next month or so on this project. So we're really looking for input on this now so that we can move forward with finalizing design. This is kind of the last piece of design that we haven't finalized. And then we're hoping to go to construction a few months later, hopefully like around December. So right now, I'm happy to answer any questions. We have a survey. We've already gotten a lot of response on it. And it'll be open for another week through September 1st. So please go take it. And if you haven't taken the self-identification survey, you can do that. I think we'll drop that in the chat box again if it's not still visible. And if I don't get to anything that you want to know tonight, or if you have anything else you wanted to ask or tell me, you're welcome to email me or give me a call. My contact information is on the screen. So now I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you're calling in, I believe it's *6 to unmute. It's either *6 or #6. I apologize, but you can unmute yourself if you have any questions. And if you do that, just state your name and your question.
Hi everyone, my name is Fernanda Quintanilla, and I will be fielding your questions. The first comment we got was, traffic furniture does not make it safe for bicycles. It causes a higher probability of crashes, especially when training in race pelotons.
So that's, I mean, there's not exactly a question there, but
or a comment.
Yeah, it's more a comment. It's, you know, there's a lot of data that shows that protected bike lanes are effective, that they're a really safe option. They are much more comfortable for people, especially people who aren't quite as gung-ho about bicycling. So, you know, we're not really concerned about the safety of either of these options. We think they're both good and safe options. But you know, there are pros and cons to each.
Our next question is, or comment, the problem with bike lanes is that cars expect all cyclists, including the racers, to be riding there instead of in the traffic lane. It's better to educate cars that they have to share the traffic lane with cyclists.
So, I mean, I understand where you're coming from with that question. Certainly, you know, if everybody followed the rules, if cars would yield to bicyclists in all cases, that would be great. You know, unfortunately, you know, our decades of experience of bicycle infrastructure and ridership in the United States, most places that are designed that way, you don't have much bike ridership. When you actually design protected or you know, or other facilities of that caliber, you see there are cities in the United States and abroad where you have much higher ridership. So you know, I understand where you're coming from. You know, the reality is that we can, you know, education is a very important part of bicycle transportation, both for people riding and people who are interacting with people who are riding. But you know, the data that we found is that you really just don't get very many people riding when you don't have bike lanes and you don't have like a protected space for them.
Our next question. Cars parking to the left of bikes, pedestrians will be crossing right in front. How does a cyclist get through the parked cars to make a left turn?
So at every intersection and actually at every alley, I mean, you know, you like Herbert and the other smaller streets along there. There are significant gaps, so anybody who wants to turn left can anticipate that and get over a little bit before their turn to make that left turn. You can also do like what's called a box turn, and that would allow you to you know, cross and straight ahead and then make a left turn from there and basically make two straight movements through the intersection. And then the other important piece is that at Stone, at 6th Avenue and 4th Avenue, there will be space for bicyclists to get over into the left turn area.
I do want to add, for those of us joining us over the phone, you can take the survey at that's bit.ly/university bike survey, no spaces. So that's bit.ly/university bike survey. I'm reading. I just want to let you know I'm reading the comments because there are some people on the phone that aren't able to read the chat, like those joining on the computer are. So one of the comments we received from Anonymous was, I work at 5th and University and park there. I vote for buffered bike lanes to sustain much needed neighborhood parking for local businesses.
Great. Yeah, please take the survey if you haven't already. If you aren't able to, for whatever reason, to take the survey online, you can give me a call, 419-2245, and I can log that as well. But we will be looking at the survey data and using that to help guide our decision.
We have another anonymous comment that says, do not remove parking. Thank you for your feedback. One constituent has a comment. It says, I own and live at the home at, I'm not going to say his address, but on East University Boulevard and have no real off-street parking. One of the options being considered bans parking in front of my home. What is being planned for parking, currently 2 vehicles, as well as accommodating service vehicles, garbage pickup, and semi-annual brush and bulky pickup?
Thank you for that question. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of why we're here, is to discuss the comfort level with the protected bike lane option that would impact parking. You know, certainly there would be parking available on side streets. We would work with environmental and general services on their trash and brush and bulky pickup to find a way to make that work. You know, as it is now, we haven't worked out all the details of that yet because we honestly are still considering multiple options for the design. But you know, we do want to hear about the impact to parking. We do want to know if this is going to be a serious concern. And yeah, well, I mean, we'll be evaluating that. We'll be looking at the survey results. We'll be looking at the survey results specifically of people who live in West University as well. But yeah, I mean, if you know, you live on a corner where parking is going to be removed in order to create that visibility for bicyclists, then parking would need to occur either you know, a little bit further down the street or on a side street.
We received another comment from an anonymous constituent. I work for a nonprofit at the historic Y. We now all pay for parking and need parking as we live far from the Y. Please maintain parking.
Yeah, we will certainly, you know, we can work with the historic Y. We can explore options. You know, one thing we might be able to do is to have like a combined option. We could do the buffered bike lane in that block in front of the historic Y and not impact parking, and then we could transition to a protected bike lane potentially. So yeah, I mean, we definitely want to hear this kind of feedback and understand the concerns people have, but you know, we certainly don't want to impact the ability of businesses and nonprofits in the area to do business, in addition to people who live in the area as well.
Logan asks, you talked about removing the left turn lane at the intersection. Does that mean that the lane is gone and cars cannot turn left? Or does that mean cars would be turning left at the intersection from the single lane?
That would mean that cars would be turning left from the single lane. So it would be similar to Park and University. If you're heading eastbound on University, there's no left turn at Park Avenue. That was taken out when the streetcar was constructed. So in that case, there is a single signal phase just for cars going that direction. So people would be able to go right, left, and straight all at once. And the traffic volumes on that street, particularly along University, are relatively low when it comes to signalized intersections. So it may create a small additional delay, but as it is now, I mean, if you're familiar with the area, it's, you know, there's a lot of time when there are no cars going through the intersection. Yeah, so they would be able to turn left.
An anonymous question. Can you address the differences between the two designs vis-a-vis which are better at A, slowing car traffic, and B, discouraging cars from cutting through University that don't live along or near it? Which of these designs narrows the roadway and slows vehicle speeds? Which would be safer for an 8-year-old or 80-year-old person using a bicycle? Which designs take into account pedestrian comfort on the sidewalks?
So, you know, what we found is that actual physical, I guess, you know, actual physical elements that are near the roadway or nearest to where people are driving tend to slow down traffic more. So if we're actually moving the cars that are parked on the street away from the curbs and we're putting the bike lane up against the curb, you know, that's visually narrowing the roadway. And when you do that, you do slow down car traffic typically. So that option, the protected bike lane option, would be more likely to slow car traffic. As far as discouraging cars from cutting through, one of the challenges here is that this is a roadway that that is used for people driving around the area and around 4th Avenue, University, downtown area. We can't stop cut through traffic. The protected bike lane may discourage traffic a little bit more because it does, create a sense that it's a smaller roadway. People may opt to go to Speedway or 6th instead. But I don't expect there'd be a huge difference in car volume from either option. And then let's see. So what would be safer?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the full question. So what would be safer for an 8-year-old or 80-year-old person? Putting them as far as possible away from the car traffic, giving them a physical barrier between the traffic and where they're riding. That's most people find that preferable. So the protected bike lane would generally be the preferable option in that case. That being said, a buffered bike lane, that would give more space between cars and bikes than we currently see today.
Our next question is, will there be any accommodations made for delivery trucks?
That's a very good question. We would need to discuss that. We might need to see about like a dedicated loading zone, or trucks might need to park on a side street. But that's a good question, and we can certainly look into that if we do decide to move forward with the buffered, or I'm sorry, with the protected option. But yeah, right now, delivery trucks do, they tend to park down the center lane on a lot of streets. So we would need to figure that out.
The next question is, how will residents be notified? I'm assuming notified of any future changes.
So we have in this case and the last 2 rounds of input we did, we sent out mailers to everybody within about a quarter mile of the project area. So hopefully everybody in that area has received the notice. We've also notified the neighborhood associations in the area. We'll do the same thing when we are getting ready for construction to discuss how that's going to go and how that'll impact people living and working in the area. But we'll be sending out mailers again. We'll be sending out emails to neighborhood associations as well.
So for the parking protected lane options, can you discuss how people on bikes will navigate the intersection of 4th Ave and University with turning vehicles? Will there be reconfigured protected intersections like Dutch intersections that make the person on a bike more visible to turning cars?
So at this time, we're not looking at making any significant changes to the intersection at 4th and University. Right now there's what we call a bike box. It's that big green painted area that bikes are allowed to get into in order to position themselves in front of car traffic so that they can make left turns or go straight at the intersection. Dutch intersections tend, those tend to be where you have 2 streets with protected lanes intersecting each other. 4th Avenue isn't currently designed like that, so that's not something we're considering at this time.
So will it be permissible to just ride in the roadway? And if yes, what measures can be taken to prevent people and vehicles from hectoring and bullying cyclists?
I believe and Andy, I don't know if you can speak to this, but I believe even in the presence of a bike lane, bicyclists are permitted to ride in the regular travel lane as well. So that would still be permissible. And as far as measures to be taken to prevent people in cars from bullying cyclists, it goes back to education. We can't control the behavior of people. But hopefully people will be civil. If people choose to ride in the the vehicle lane, we expect that people driving are going to be civil. So if you aren't willing to to assume that possibility, then the buffered or protected lane will be available.
A constituent wants to know if we can show the overview of the bike lanes again. They connected just recently and would like to see the ones that they missed.
Sure. So here's the first option. This would be the protected bike lanes that would be positioned between parked cars and the curb. And so you can see a picture of a similar facility elsewhere. And then you can see cross sections and then just like a sample of what it would look like from the air. So this option would, due to having to create visibility around intersections, it would impact parking around intersections. So around a third or so of the car parking would be lost on University. The other option is buffered bike lanes, which would leave the parking intact and would create parking with a buffer between, or I'm sorry, would create a bike lane with a buffer between the vehicle lanes and between parked cars. Both options are an improvement over the existing conditions for the types of riders that we're targeting, who really want their own space to feel comfortable riding in. Then the other sort of decision point here is from Herbert to 4th Avenue, do we want to keep the bike lane, keep parking, and remove the left turn lane, and potentially create a little additional delay at the intersection? Or do we want to keep the left turn lane, keep the bike lanes, and remove the parking? So those are the options we're considering. Those are what we're gathering feedback on in the survey, and we definitely want to hear what people's preferences are there.
Mike asks, is there a reason why the parking lane is 9 feet in one option and 7 feet in the other? 9 feet seems really big.
That's a good question. There is a reason for that, yeah. The reason is that people do use these parking lanes as parking for for their house. A lot of times people don't have off-street parking. We've heard from people that when they're getting in and out of their car, when they're loading their kids in their car, they don't want cars rushing by too fast. So we made a conscious choice for the protected bike lane option, where the parking is right next to the vehicle lane, to make that lane wider, so that most cars are around 6 feet in width. So if you park all the way to the right, you've got 3 feet, which is plenty of room to get around the car and stay out of the travel lane. Whereas the other option with the buffered bike lane, we've got the parking, a 7-foot parking lane, you've got a 3-foot buffer next to that, then you've got bike lane. So you've already got that you've effectively got like a 10-foot lane in that option. So in both cases, we're really just trying to make sure we are providing enough space for people to get in and out of their cars safely.
Our next question is, would confident riders, say those training in Pelotons, still be allowed to take the lane in a protected bike lane configuration? Yes, I believe so, and we have Andy Bemis here, our bicycle and pedestrian coordinator with the city. I have to confess that I'm fairly certain that that's still allowed, but I am not 100% sure. So Andy, I don't know if you are familiar with the law in that regard.
Hi all, this is Andy. Yeah, I think you're right about that, Ryan. I will say that yes, I think you're right. Even when the buffered or protected bike lane is available, I believe you should still be allowed to take the lane, as you mentioned. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't think that, I will say that I don't think University Boulevard is the ideal racing training facility, although I know it adds, it connects to better places to do that. So I don't, I don't think we're trying to encourage this street as a good street for, racing in pelotons on. Although, like I said, I do know it connects to areas where that's popular. So.
Thanks, Andy. Our next question is, could you explain how a protected bike lane is the most effective at slowing car traffic? If it's the safer option, I'm okay with losing some parking.
Yeah, so research has shown that when you effectively visually narrow the roadway with parked cars, with trees, other like physical objects like that, people naturally drive slower because it makes them more cautious. Whereas painting lines on the road, I mean, that certainly delineates space for other users, but it's not as effective at slowing car traffic down. So it really comes down to the sort of the visual for people who are driving down the roadway. And if you've narrowed up that roadway visually, people are going to drive slower.
Our next question is, these things you're saying regarding protected bike lanes apply to bigger, faster roads. This is a slow, bike-friendly area and should be clearly signed and marked as such. It makes much more sense for cars and bikes to use the same lane. What doesn't make sense is the idea in some drivers' heads that they must always pass bikes and get to the next intersection first. What about big, beautiful signs that identify this bike boulevard? No, if you put the bikes off to the side, the cars will only go faster, making it worse for us all, especially walkers.
I see where you're coming from there. I would say, we are going to put up signs. We put up signs marking the bike boulevard along the whole route. The issue is that when you look at the Federal Highway Administration, when you look at the National Association of City Transportation Officials, the research they've done and their guidelines for bike facilities, you have anywhere between 1,000, 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles per day is sort of like a cutoff for what's considered acceptable for a shared street. And similarly, it's you're looking at 20, maybe 25 miles an hour. That's another cutoff for that being considered acceptable, because when you have faster traffic, you're having you'll see more cars coming up behind bicyclists and passing them, whereas when you have slower traffic, there aren't as many interactions of that nature. And that goes back to that I showed earlier, which is the more conservative one from the Federal Highway Administration. But with 3,000 vehicles per day and 29 miles per hour, that's really above these types of guidelines for the types of riders that we're trying to reach. So that's why we're exploring this option for this area in particular, because it is higher vehicle volumes and higher speeds.
Our next question is, 4th Ave and University floods during almost any rain. Exit from vehicles requires getting out on the curb or walking through 8 to 12 inches of water. Will the flooding issues be addressed?
Unfortunately, no. We're not doing any drainage improvements as part of this project. That's not really in the scope or the budget of this type of a project.
Which bike lane proposal is safer for cyclists?
So, both options are safe. Both of them are in the realm of what is recommended for this type of facility. So I don't want to say that one is necessarily safer than another, but when you create that separate space for bicyclists, you're gonna create a higher comfort area. And certainly, if you're putting bicyclists behind parked cars, there's that physical protection there that you don't get with striped lines. But roadway design is surprisingly complicated, and so I don't want to speculate on which one would be safer. But when you give cyclists their own space, then you tend to have better outcomes.
Would this project include smoothing out potholes and large cracks in the bike lane?
So we are we are definitely exploring how to do that. I don't want to announce for sure that that's happening, but we have been exploring options for doing improvements to the roadway surface. And because this roadway surface is a bit old. There's definitely some cracks and bumps, and especially near the curb. So we would definitely. We are doing our best to make sure that's addressed, but at this time, I don't think I can say that for certain.
We received a comment. The left turn lane is so unnecessary. I turn left there every day and almost never ever have even one car ahead of me trying to turn.
So yeah, I mean, we see the measurements that have been taken at the intersection show that in the peak hour when there's the most traffic, I think it's 22 vehicles are per hour are turning left at 4th and University. So that's about one car every 3 minutes. And as someone who's ridden through there many times, that tracks with my experience as well. Is that often there's no car there, or there's maybe one car. So that's really why we've put that option on the table, is because there aren't a lot of cars turning left. So we do think that it's reasonable to consider the option of taking out that left turn lane and keeping both parking and the bike lane.
We do have some people online that may have missed the presentation or would like to see the options online. The project website has been posted in the chat. For those that are joining us over the phone, the website is bit.ly/3 RD treat bike, third treat bike, that is with no spaces. Our next question is, bikes next to sidewalks, like in places in New York City, can be a little more dangerous, mixing high-speed biking and pedestrians unaware of bike traffic.
I am not familiar with any data that would show that that's the case. In this case, we've got a lot of trees and other things between the sidewalks and the bike lane. Bike lane, will be marked. There's a lot of data that shows that this type of configuration is a safe one. So. I understand the concern about that, but whatever I guess configuration you put, whether you put cars next to the sidewalk, there's always a potential for interaction, but that shouldn't be a significant concern in this case.
Our next question from City Rider is, would the option 1 protected bike lane be like the one on Stone downtown? That one works so well.
It would be similar. So the one on Stone Stone is a one-way road right there. The bike lane is two-way. Right now it only goes from Toole to, I think, Alameda. Yeah, I mean, the general idea is the same, where you would have car parking between the bike lane or lanes and car traffic. Another difference is that at least initially, we're not going to be doing like raised concrete curbs like you see at Stone, just due to the budget of this project. We're looking at using paint and flexible posts in order to create that delineation between the parking and the bike lane. If it works well, then we have the option of making that a more permanent solution in the future.
Our next question is, at the Y, the turning lane is used by the CSA and UPS all the time for delivery. That is a big issue.
So we would need to work with the Y and see if there's if there's some way of accommodating that. If we can create a loading zone or accommodate traffic on a side street or something like that. Yeah, but that's good information.
We did get one comment from a constituent. We live 1 block away from this and have never received any mailers or info about this. Please don't rely on the neighborhood association to inform neighbors. They don't connect to many residents.
So we try not to rely just on the neighborhood association because we know not everybody is active or involved with those. We did send out mailers that hopefully people should have gotten about a week ago, and they should have gone to every single address within a quarter mile of this area. If you didn't receive it, I don't know what to tell you. I know there's been issues. I'm sure you've heard there's issues with the Postal Service. I don't want to blame them, but we certainly do what we can to make sure that everybody can hear about this. I'm glad you did learn about this in some way, but we've sent out mailers for every time that we've done outreach on this project. So I apologize if you haven't received anything, and I'm not sure what to say. We've even used different firms that have handled the printing and mailing. So if you haven't received it anytime, I'm not sure what to say.
I will say, if you'd like to add your email address in the comment box, we can include you in our emailing list that we send out whenever there are updates on this project. Our next question is, University at 6th Ave, flexible bollards were installed to create a protected space at the intersection corners. They also enforced squared turns, which are safer, and they precluded parking too close to the corners. Within days, the flexible poles began disappearing. Who removed them were the adjacent residents who were miffed that their parking had become less convenient and less prolific. How will you deal with this going forward? I have been disappointed by the lack of enforcement regarding the destruction of roadway infrastructure, especially cycling infrastructure.
So certainly, that was a neighborhood initiated project. I'm afraid that I'm not too familiar with any agreements as far as maintenance goes there. Certainly, when if we go with the protected bike lane option, we will be proactive about repairing or replacing any flexible posts that are damaged or removed. So I unfortunately people are going to run into them sometimes. If you have disgruntled neighbors, that could be an issue. But we'll do our best to make sure that it's maintained, if that's the option we go with.
We have one comment from an anonymous constituent. Bikes between parked cars and curb. Really difficult to navigate intersections on a bike or make left turns. It's great downtown by the courthouse because it's basically just one block. I mentioned earlier that left turns at Stone, at 6th, and at 4th, those intersections will be designed to accommodate that, where the bikes will have room for the intersection to move over into a space where they can make left turns. If you're turning on another street, 5th, 7th, Herbert, then you can either make like that box turn where you go straight across and then you maneuver to go straight across University, or you can exit the bike lane a little bit early and join the vehicle lane for as far as you need to in order to make that left turn. So most people who are riding through in this area, they're going straight through. They're turning on 4th or 6th or Stone, or they're going all the way through. But you always have the option of moving into the vehicle lane, which is pretty much the same situation that we see now. I'll read a couple of comments and then a question. There should not be much speed differential between cars and bikes on this stretch. That's the bottom line. There are so many people riding bikes on this road. I'd love to see a protected bike lane that caters to riders of all levels, ages, and abilities, not just road warriors. And the next question is, so if you did go with the painted line scheme, how much of that infrastructure is actually enforceable? For instance, the bike boxes, they have no force of law, or am I mistaken about that?
So Andy, feel free to jump in on this, but bike boxes, the stop bar for cars is behind the bike box. So, not everybody necessarily will obey them, especially when there isn't already a bike there. But generally speaking, people do stop behind the bike box, and they are required to.
Does the protected bike lane option eliminate the left turn lane?
So yeah, the left turn lane that stretches all the way down the street from Stone to 4th, we would be taking that out. It's with a traffic volume of about 3,000 vehicles per day. That's not really warranted for a road like this. So the general left turn lane would be taken out. However, you know, we're still looking at 2 options for 4th and University of keeping that left turn lane for the people who are driving through that intersection, going through the signal.
I would love to see a Dutch-style roundabout at the intersection of University Boulevard and 6th Ave and University Boulevard and 4th Ave instead of the conventional intersections and traffic lights.
So we actually have a project coming up on 6th Avenue. It's another one funded by Proposition 407, same as this project, that it's a protected bike lane that would go down 6th Avenue from Speedway to 7th Street. So if we do end up with a protected intersection, or I'm sorry, if we do end up with a protected bike lane on University, and then we build that protected bike lane on 6th Avenue, then we'll have a good environment for a Dutch style intersection. So that's something we can certainly consider. I think what we're talking about is not really a roundabout with like something in the center. I could be mistaken. Not like a traffic circle in the middle, but that type of intersection where bikes kind of go around the outside of the intersection. At 4th Avenue, that would be trickier because we have to accommodate the streetcar. There's more traffic volume. And 4th Avenue does not have a protected bike lane, so it wouldn't be the same kind of a situation, and it wouldn't be as compatible.
A constituent wants to know, are these comments entered into your log for consideration?
Yeah, we keep a log of all of these. We'll be reviewing all of them. I think I highly encourage everybody who is in attendance to take the survey. In addition to answering, your preferences for the different design options, there is a comment box, and you can write whatever you want into that. So we'll be considering both, but we would prefer that your comments come from the survey if possible.
Our next question is, can we assume that any design you come up with will preclude U-turns? Is that correct? It looks like Andy answered, that is correct and is consistent with the existing configuration. Yeah,
thank you, Andy. Yeah, I believe I believe U-turns are prohibited due to the yellow lines that are already on the roadway.
Our next question is, would speed limits be lowered, and are people in wheelchairs who take the lane now being considered in this?
So typically we lower the speed limit on bike boulevards to 20 miles per hour. This is a little bit of a different situation. So, it may depend on which configuration we ultimately end up going with. But regardless of the speed limits, we expect that if we go with protected bike lane option, there will be less, there will be slower car traffic in that case. And then as far as people in wheelchairs who take the lane, I'm not sure the legality of that exactly. The sidewalk would be available to them if I think that there are not consistent curb ramps in the area. So, if they want to take the bike lane, then that's the best option, I think, for them. So that it would be, and I would think that would be a better situation than what's currently out there right now, where they would be in the car lane.
So a constituent asked, will police cars and service vehicles park in the protected bike lane like they do on Mountain Avenue? And Andy replied, they're not meant to park in the protected bike lane. Keep in mind that there would be a parking lane also, which is not present on Mountain Avenue. And then our next question is, how are you connecting the Hawk to the bike boulevard at University and Stone? Sometimes cars turning onto University off Stone turn too fast, and people who just cross the Hawk have a false sense of security when they're crossing from the middle of the street to the side of the road.
That's a good question. I don't believe we received any specific comments about that when we were doing outreach earlier. that's something we can look at and see if there's something we can do. But yeah, I mean, the way that it's configured out there, the way the signage is, bikes are expected to yield to vehicles. So we can certainly look at that and see if that's something that can change.
There's a comment from a constituent that says that they got a mailer and about 4 different notices via email from West University Neighborhood Association. We're happy to hear that you're receiving our notices and that our efforts are showing signs of fruition. Our next question is, wouldn't the protected bike lane interfere with the streetcar turnaround that exists on the west side of 4th Ave on University?
The west side of 4th Avenue on University. No, so the protected bike lane will just be west of 4th Avenue. So it will not cover the area where the streetcar is. So that was not included in the scope of the project that was approved in Prop Pro 7. That's a whole other can of worms, really, because there's no way to do a protected bike lane in that section without completely taking out parking. So that would need to be a larger conversation. So right now, no, there wouldn't be any interaction with the streetcar tracks and the protected bike lane.
We did get a question from a constituent asking, will the bike lane only exist on one side of the street, east-west direction? And Andy replied, the bike lanes would be located on both sides of the street.
And then I'll pull up the visual as well, just to show. So you can see like the bottom right-hand picture, that sort of cross-section that shows the different lanes. It shows that bikes would be going the same direction as cars on the same side of the street. And so that would be the case whether it's the protected bike lane option or the buffered option.
We have one last comment. Lots of U-turns happen at CSA time. No,
Papa. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly space now for a lot of cars to be able to make a U-turn, but it is not currently permitted. And if the street is reconfigured, then that's going to be more difficult, and so we would expect there'd be fewer U-turns in that case.
At this time, that is all the questions we've received.
All right, it's we're happy to answer. I'm happy to answer any more questions people may have. If I haven't covered anything that people want to know about, happy to go over anything in the presentation.
And again, if you'd like to receive updates on the project, please just throw your email address in the chat box and we'll make sure to add you to our listserv.
Any other questions?
Looks like we received one more question. If a bike or a pet is crossing at the Tucson at Stone, the light for cars is red. So why are they turning right anyhow? Shouldn't there be no right turn on the temporary red light that is triggered by the bike or pet? I get why there's a warning to yield to turning cars, but it shouldn't really be happening.
That's a very good suggestion. If right turn on red is not currently prohibited, I think we'll look into that and see if that's something that we can change, because that makes a lot of sense. If they have a red light, then that means that there are people crossing there on foot or on bike.
Just a reminder that this presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the project website afterwards if you missed any part of it or would like to watch again.
So unless we have any other further questions at 7 o'clock, like I said, I'm happy to answer any more questions. But thank you all for joining us. I apologize, my voice getting a little froggy, especially toward the end. I ran out of water. Next time I'll make sure to have another glass. Looks like we might have a couple more questions. I see. Will this presentation recording be online? Yes, we'll be posting a PDF of the presentation and a recording of this town hall on the website in the next few days. So watch for that. We'll put it up as soon as we can. Let's see. If left turn lanes are removed, it would be in both directions. So we would be removing the left turn lane. I think what you're referring to is at 4th and University. We would just be removing the one that is on the west leg of the intersection. So for cars that are eastbound on University waiting to turn left and northbound on 4th Avenue. So the other left turn lanes at that intersection would not be impacted.
We have a question. Is there any power to enforce the striping? I ride 4th regularly, and every time there are cars not parked within the white parking lines. As in, cars are often spilling into the road, and I don't see tickets enforcing the required no parking outside of white lines.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's certainly enforceable. I know that there are times when that's enforced because of the streetcar, because if cars are too far over the white line, then they block the streetcar from passing. Yes, it is enforceable. That is, you know, a resource issue with the police to ticket people for that sort of thing, or for parking services. Donovan, I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, we do enforce those types of violations. Right now, we're pretty low on enforcement because of the economic situation. But certainly, we do write tickets for that type of violation.
All right, thank you, Donovan. I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for joining us. I think we'll wrap it up now. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me or give me a call. My information is on the screen. For anybody who's joining us on the phone, my phone number I can be reached at is 520-419-2245. And I can be emailed at ryan.fagan@tucsonaz.gov. That's ryan.fagan@tucsonaz.gov. And please, if I encourage everybody to take the survey. Anybody that you know who lives in the area or who travels through the area, please feel free to share that with them. We are taking comments on survey responses through a week from today, September 1st. And if you haven't already taken the self-identification survey for this meeting so that we can get some demographic information, understand who we're serving, and better serve people in the future, please go there as well. That's opentownhall.com/9423. All right, have a good night, everybody, and we will certainly be in touch and you know, happy to talk about where we're at with the design after after we've received the results of the survey. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I can put you on an email list. I can certainly circle back with you on that.
This is Andy, and before we sign off, Ryan, I'm sorry if you mentioned it, I might have missed it, but just so people know, I think they have 1 week to complete the survey. I mean, please do it sooner rather than later, but it's live until what date?
September 1st.
Oh,
So,
right there on the screen, of course. Thank you.
all right, thank you very much, everybody, and have a good night, and stay safe.